The morning show studio was already buzzing long before the cameras started rolling. Producers hurried around with clipboards, adjusting lights, checking microphones, and making sure everything looked perfect for the next segment. In the middle of all this movement sat a quiet school teacher who had been invited as a guest. She wasn't used to bright sets or TV cameras, and she kept smoothing the edges of her scarf while taking careful breaths to stay calm. She had taught children for almost 20 years, and nothing in her job had ever required her to sit under so many lights with so many people watching her, but she wasn't nervous because she had something to hide. She was nervous simply because she didn't feel like someone who belonged on national TV. She had always believed that teachers worked behind the scenes. They weren't the ones who gave speeches or sat on talk shows. They taught lessons, listened to their students, and stayed long after school hours to help with homework or prepare the next day's work. So, as she waited in that studio chair, she wondered silently why she had been chosen. The show's host, warm and friendly, approached her during the final minutes before filming. He greeted her with a smile and asked if she was comfortable. She nodded politely, even though her hands were still a little shaky. He explained that the segment would be about kindness, specifically how kindness can shape children at home and in school. She was there to talk about small acts of goodness, things she believed most people overlooked. She smiled more naturally at that point. Kindness was something she understood well. It was something she tried to teach every single day. Not with long speeches, but with simple gestures, listening to a student who felt ignored, helping a shy child gain confidence, or encouraging kids to support each other instead of competing all the time. She felt more relaxed when she talked about that. Finally, a voice echoed through the studio. "We're living 5, 4, 3. The music faded, the cameras turned, and the familiar morning show intro began. The host introduced the topic with his usual energy, talking about how small acts of kindness can create big changes. He then turned toward the teacher and introduced her to the audience. She sat upright, trying her best to keep her voice steady. They started with simple questions about her school, her students, and the challenges she faced as a teacher. She answered calmly and honestly. She talked about how kids were incredibly observant, how they copied the behaviors they saw around them, especially the ones from adults. The host listened closely and asked her to share an example that was the moment that would surprise everyone watching. She took a small breath and said that students didn't learn kindness just from lessons in textbooks. They learned it by watching how adults treated each other. And then, very naturally, she mentioned a public figure she admired deeply for the way he carried himself. Keanu Reeves. The host raised his eyebrows in interest. The audience shifted forward a little, sensing something heartfelt was coming. The teacher wasn't someone who typically followed celebrities or entertainment news, but she had seen several clips and interviews over the years showing Keanu greeting workers respectfully, helping strangers when no one asked him to, and quietly supporting causes without making it a big show. She had seen videos of him offering his seat to someone tired, calmly chatting with fans, or letting others speak when he could have taken the spotlight. In her gentle voice, she explained that he seemed to treat everyone the same way, whether they were famous or not, rich or not. She said she admired how he stayed humble even though the world knew his name. Children, she said, needed to see examples like that. They needed to see real behavior, not just speeches or slogans. As she spoke, she didn't try to exaggerate or sound more emotional than she felt. Her words were simple, sincere, and honest. She didn't plan on mentioning him. The conversation had led her there naturally. But once she started talking about him, she didn't hold back her admiration. She said his kindness felt genuine, not performed. She said she wished more people, especially adults who influenced kids, understood the power of being gentle. The host looked pleasantly surprised, because guests on the show usually talked about books, school campaigns, or classroom activities, not a well-known actor. But the way she described him didn't sound like a fan praising a favorite star. It sounded like a teacher recognizing good character where she saw it. The audience in the studio reacted softly, some smiling, others nodding. There was something comforting about the way she spoke. She continued explaining how she sometimes showed Her students short clips of people helping others, people being calm in difficult situations, or people speaking kindly even when they didn't have to. She didn't mention his name directly to the children, but she told the viewers that if they ever saw him in interviews, they could notice how respectful he always was. And she believed that little things like that made a difference. The host leaned in and asked what exactly inspired her the most. She answered without thinking too long. She said it wasn't his fame or his roles in movies. It was the way he stayed grounded. She admired how he didn't chase attention or try to impress people. Instead, he seemed comfortable living quietly and treating people with dignity. She added that this was rare in a world where many people tried to become famous for the smallest things. The studio grew quieter as she continued speaking, almost like everyone wanted to hear every word. Viewers across the country watched her, some with their morning coffee in hand, others getting ready for work or school. Her voice carried a calm sincerity that made people pause for a moment in their busy day. At one point, she laughed softly and said she hoped she wasn't embarrassing him by praising him so much. The host assured her that her words were honest and meaningful, and that the audience would appreciate hearing them. He even joked gently that if Keanu happened to be watching, he would probably smile and thank her politely. She laughed again, a little shy but no longer nervous. The cameras didn't feel so intimidating anymore. She was just sharing what she believed in. The host wrapped up the segment by thanking her for her honesty and for the work she continued to do with her students. She thanked him back with a warm smile. When the cameras finally went off, the studio team applauded lightly. As they often did after meaningful segments, the teacher felt relieved. She hadn't tried to impress anyone or prepare clever lines. She had simply spoken from the heart. She didn't know that her words would reach far beyond that studio. She didn't know that people online would pick up the clip, replay it over and over, and share it across all kinds of platforms. She didn't know that her sincere praise would end up in front of the very person she admired. All she knew was that she had talked about kindness, something she believed the world needed a little more of. And she walked out of the studio feeling grateful that she had been given the chance to speak about something meaningful, never imagining the unexpected path her words would take next. After the morning show aired, the teacher returned to her quiet life, thinking little about what had happened on camera. She went back to grading papers, preparing lessons, and helping her students with homework. She didn't watch much television herself and wasn't even sure if anyone outside the studio had seen her segment. To her, the interview had been just a small moment to talk about something. Important kindness and respect, but life has a way of surprising people when they least expect it. Within hours, clips of her speaking about Keanu Reeves had started appearing on social media. Someone had uploaded a short segment from the show online, capturing the moment when she described his humble and respectful behavior. The video was simple, but the way she spoke with sincerity made it feel different from the usual viral content. People began sharing it with comments like, "This teacher has a point," and "Why doesn't the world have more people like her?" At first, she didn't notice. She spent her day helping a student who had been struggling with reading comprehension, another who had forgotten their homework multiple times, and a quiet child who had trouble speaking in class. She moved from one desk to another, giving small encouragements and listening patiently. Her focus was always on her students. Fame or viral videos had never been her concern. Meanwhile, online, the clip began to gain momentum. People were not only sharing it because of what she said, but also because it felt genuine. There were no flashy graphics, no dramatic background music, no exaggerated reactions, just a teacher talking about something that mattered. Viewers commented on how refreshing it was to hear someone speak with honesty instead of trying to impress the camera. Slowly, the clip was being reposted on different pages, accounts, and fan groups. Each share added a little more reach, spreading it far beyond what she had imagined. By the end of the day, she began receiving messages. At first, they were from friends and family who had noticed the video. They sent screenshots, links, and comments like, "Did you see this? Everyone is talking about you. And you sounded amazing on TV." She smiled and replied politely, not fully understanding the scale of the response. It felt strange to be the center of attention, even in such a small way. She had never sought recognition and was usually content teaching quietly every day as more people saw the clip. A few comments started mentioning Keanu Reeves directly. "Hey, Keanu, this teacher just explained why everyone loves you," wrote one viewer. Others added, "You should see this, Keanu. People notice your kindness." At first, she didn't think much of it. She assumed the comments were just social media chatter, something that would fade in a few days. She had learned that viral trends often come and go quickly, but then something unusual happened. News outlets began picking up the story. They highlighted how a teacher, speaking simply about kindness, had praised a well-known actor and how that praise felt genuine and heartfelt. Headlines ranged from "Teacher's words about Keanu Reeves touch hearts" to "A teacher reminds us why kindness matters." The teacher read some of the articles, astonished that people were talking so much about something she had said so naturally. She didn't expect her words to have any impact outside the classroom, let alone on national news. Soon, social media users started creating small compilations of her speech, highlighting her points about respect and humility. Some included short clips of Keanu's real-life moments where he had helped others or behaved kindly, connecting her words with his actions. Fans of the actor were sharing these posts widely, tagging each other and adding comments like, "This teacher just said what we all feel about him," or, "Finally, someone noticed his true character." The teacher was amazed at how one honest statement could ripple through so many people. By the next morning, the clip had reached millions of views online. People from different countries were commenting, sharing, and discussing what she had said. Some teachers reached out, thanking her for reminding them why teaching wasn't just about lessons and grades, but also about shaping values. Parents commented, saying they would show the video to their children to demonstrate the importance of kindness. She read these messages quietly, feeling a mixture of surprise and humility. She hadn't realized her small moment on a TV segment could inspire so many. Then she noticed something truly unexpected. A few online posts suggested that Keanu Reeves himself might have seen the clip. While many people were joking or speculating, the teacher felt a small flutter of excitement. Could it really be possible that someone she admired had noticed her words? She tried not to think too much about it, reminding herself that she had no way of knowing. But the thought lingered, and she smiled quietly at the possibility. Her daily routine continued, but now with a new awareness that the world was watching. Students noticed her distracted glances at her phone during breaks, and a few friends teased her gently about becoming internet famous. She laughed along, but deep down she focused on what mattered most: her students. She didn't want the attention to change her priorities. She still spent long afternoons grading papers, mentoring students, and helping those who struggled, just as she always had. As the week went on, the momentum of the clip didn't slow down. News shows invited her to speak again, and social media pages asked for interviews. She was polite and grateful but declined most invitations, explaining that her focus had to remain on her school and her students. She didn't want this viral moment to turn her life upside down. She simply wanted people to remember her words, not her name or face. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Keanu Reeves had indeed heard about the clip. On a quiet morning between filming schedules, someone on his team showed him the video. He watched it, paying attention not to the camera angles or production value, but to the content, the sincerity in the teacher's voice. The way she described kindness, and the way she recognized qualities he had always tried to practice quietly. He smiled, not out of ego or pride, but because her words reminded him that people were noticing the small, quiet efforts he tried to make. Instead of making a public statement or reacting on social media, Keanu kept his response private at first. He wanted to acknowledge her in a meaningful way, not just with a simple post or comment. He discussed quietly with his team about how they could thank her personally, but he insisted it should be done respectfully, without causing unnecessary attention or making her uncomfortable. He admired her humility as much as she had admired his character. It seemed fitting that he should respond with the same care she had shown in her words, back at the school. The teacher went about her usual tasks, unaware of how close she was to experiencing something remarkable. She prepared lesson plans, guided students through difficult subjects, and offered encouragement where it was needed. To her, the viral clip was a fleeting curiosity, interesting but not life-changing. She still believed that the real work was happening in her classroom, not online. She still believed that the small gestures of kindness she practiced every day mattered more than any attention she could receive, yet the world had begun to notice. People were inspired by her sincerity, discussing the impact of small acts of kindness and sharing her message far beyond her immediate circle. What had started as a quiet statement on national TV was now a conversation touching countless viewers, reminding them that admiration isn't just about fame or talent, but also about genuine respect and humility. Her words were connecting with people in a way she never expected, and somewhere along the way, she had become a symbol of how simple honesty could reach hearts across the globe. As the day ended, she sat at her desk, reflecting quietly. She didn't realize that what had seemed like a small, natural moment of admiration would soon set the stage for an encounter that would surprise her in ways she could never have imagined. She only knew that kindness mattered, that sincerity was powerful, and that sometimes even a simple statement could create a ripple effect far beyond anyone's expectations. And in that moment, she felt a quiet sense of wonder at how life could bring unexpected connections to those who simply tried to do good. After the viral clip had been shared countless times and news outlets had featured the teacher's words, life at her school continued as usual. She went back to her classroom routines, teaching lessons, helping students with questions, and guiding them through challenges. The attention from the internet and media had brought some curiosity from colleagues and parents, but she remained calm. For her, teaching was still the heart of her life, and that had not changed. She was proud of her students, and nothing, not even viral fame, could take that away. Meanwhile, far away, Keanu Reeves had watched the video quietly, alone in his trailer between filming scenes. He had no reason to respond publicly, and he didn't want to draw attention to himself. But something about the teacher's words had stayed with him. It wasn't the praise itself that mattered. It was her sincerity, the calm and honest way she spoke about kindness, humility, and respect. She had spoken with warmth, not flattery, and that made the message feel real. He thought about how easy it would be to just like or repost the clip online. Many people would have done that, and that would have been enough. But Keanu wanted to respond in a way that felt meaningful, not performative. He had always believed that small gestures, done thoughtfully, could carry more weight than grand statements. And in this case, he felt that a quiet, respectful acknowledgement would be the right way to honor her words. He called his assistant over and said, "I want to thank her. But it has to be done in a way that doesn't make her uncomfortable. It should be sincere and private, not just another public stunt." His assistant nodded, understanding immediately. They began discussing ideas. It had to be something simple, something human. Perhaps a letter, perhaps a personal message, but the goal was to let her know that her words had been heard and appreciated. After some discussion, they came up with a plan. Keanu wanted to surprise her in person, but without creating a spectacle. He didn't want cameras, reporters, or loud announcements. He wanted it to be genuine. Just a simple meeting between two people, the teacher who had spoken kindly about him, and him acknowledging her honesty. He emphasized, it should be something she feels comfortable with. No pressure, no show. The next few days were spent quietly arranging the details. He coordinated with the morning show producers, who were excited to help but understood his need for discretion. They planned to invite the teacher back on the show under the guise of discussing the reaction to her previous interview. Everything had to feel natural, as if it were just another segment about education and kindness. Back at school, the teacher continued her work. She noticed some students talking quietly about the video and asking questions about why people were excited online. She smiled and answered them simply, saying that kindness was always worth noticing, even if no one else paid attention. She didn't discuss Keanu much because she didn't want the attention to distract her students from learning. Her focus remained where it always had been, guiding her students with patience and care. While she worked, she began receiving more messages on social media and email. Some were from people in education, thanking her for highlighting the importance of kindness. Others were from fans of Keanu, expressing surprise and delight that she had mentioned him in such a genuine way. Many comments asked whether she had any idea he might have seen the clip. She smiled at those, but quietly replied that she didn't know and wasn't expecting anything. She had spoken honestly, without hope of reward, and that was enough for her. Meanwhile, Keanu reviewed the plan several times. He wanted to make sure everything would go smoothly, that the teacher would feel comfortable and not pressured. He spoke with the show's production team about timing, about the tone of the segment, and about how to introduce the surprise without making it feel like a stunt. Everything had to feel natural, authentic, and warm. He even asked for suggestions on how to greet her in a way that would be polite and kind, yet heartfelt. During this time, he also reflected quietly on what she had said. He thought about the way she emphasized that kindness wasn't about fame or recognition, but about how you treated others every day. Her words reminded him why he tried to remain humble despite the attention his work brought him. They reminded him that the small gestures, holding a door open, helping someone quietly, listening without judgment, were the things that truly mattered. Her recognition felt like a reflection of values he had always tried to live by. The days leading up to the surprise were filled with quiet anticipation, though only for him and his team. The teacher, unaware of what was about to happen, continued to live her life simply and peacefully. She focused on her students, graded assignments, and prepared for upcoming lessons. She still thought about the viral clip, but only as a curious and slightly amusing side effect of her honesty. She didn't imagine that the situation would lead to anything significant on the day of the segment. The teacher arrived at the studio once again. She was greeted warmly by the host, who asked her how she felt about the attention her words had received. She smiled gently, saying that she was grateful people were noticing kindness, but that she hoped the focus remained on helping others rather than her own moment in the spotlight. She emphasized that the real reward was seeing students learn and grow, not receiving applause from strangers. Behind the scenes, Keanu quietly arrived, waiting for the right moment. He didn't want to interrupt the natural flow of the show or draw unnecessary attention. He watched as the teacher shared her thoughts on the recent reactions, speaking calmly and sincerely as if she had been on TV many times before. The producers made subtle preparations, ensuring that everything was ready for the next step of the surprise. Keanu's presence was carefully planned, but it remained a secret from the teacher. Only the host knew what was about to happen. The aim was simple: to express gratitude and respect in person without creating pressure or making her uncomfortable. He had rehearsed nothing because he didn't want the moment to feel staged. He only wanted it to be genuine, a quiet acknowledgement between two people who shared an appreciation for kindness and humility. As the cameras rolled, the teacher began speaking about the importance of teaching children to be considerate, empathetic, and respectful. She emphasized that small gestures of care could have enormous effects even if they went unnoticed. She explained that modeling kindness was more important than simply talking about it. Her voice carried calm authority, and her words seemed to touch the hearts of those watching, both in the studio and at home. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, Keanu prepared to step into the moment. He waited for the right pause in conversation, the right moment when the teacher was focused on her message and the audience was ready to absorb something unexpected. The team moved carefully, making sure every detail would feel natural. The goal was not spectacle but sincerity. He wanted to thank her not for fame, but for recognizing and articulating values he himself tried to live by. The stage was set for a moment that would surprise her and everyone watching. What she didn't know was that her words, spoken simply and honestly, had traveled far and had reached the person they had been about. The admiration she had expressed, gentle and heartfelt, had created a connection that neither she nor he had expected. And soon, in a few quiet moments, that connection would become real in a way that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. The morning show studio was filled with its usual energy, the kind that comes from cameras rolling, lights shining, and crew members moving quietly but efficiently behind the scenes. The teacher arrived early, just as she had the first time, carrying her notebook and a calm, composed presence. She had grown accustomed to the slightly hectic environment, but the excitement of being on live television still made her heart beat a little faster. Today, she was there to talk about the reaction to her previous segment, to discuss kindness in the classroom and how small gestures could impact students' lives. She expected nothing more than another thoughtful conversation. The host greeted her warmly, asking how she had felt about the attention her words had received online. She smiled softly, explaining that she was grateful people were noticing kindness, but she emphasized that the real reward was in seeing children learn, grow, and treat each other with respect. She spoke naturally, without overthinking her words as she had done the first time. Her honesty had always been her strength, and she knew it resonated with viewers because it came from the heart. Behind the scenes, Keanu Reeves waited quietly. He had arrived in a discreet manner, unnoticed by the teacher or the live audience. His team had made sure everything was carefully arranged so that the surprise would feel natural, not forced. He wasn't there for publicity or attention. He was there because he had been genuinely touched by her words. The way she spoke about kindness, humility, and respect reminded him of the values he tried to live by, quietly and without expectation of recognition. He wanted to acknowledge her in the most human way possible. And today was the day as the cameras focused on the teacher. She began to share stories of her students. Examples of how small acts of consideration could make a difference, and reflections on why children needed role models who showed respect in every interaction. She didn't mention Keanu directly at first, speaking instead about kindness in general terms, but the audience and viewers at home already knew her admiration for him, and the energy in the studio was subtly charged with anticipation. People watching online could sense that something meaningful was unfolding. The host guided the conversation naturally, asking her how she had felt when she saw the viral clip of herself speaking. She smiled gently and said that she had been surprised by the attention, but that the real focus was always on teaching children values. She explained that the praise she had offered was sincere, coming from a place of admiration for someone who demonstrated respect and humility in everyday life. Her words were calm, but there was a warmth in her voice that captivated the audience. And then the moment arrived. The host, speaking directly to the camera, said, "We have a special guest here today who wanted to personally thank you for your kind words." The teacher looked slightly puzzled, unsure what he meant. The audience murmured softly, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. She tried to hide her curiosity, maintaining her composure as the host added, "Please welcome someone very special to our show." Keanu walked onto the set. His presence was calm and understated, yet it filled the space with a quiet energy. He smiled warmly at the teacher, who froze for a moment, her eyes widening in surprise. She had not expected this. She had spoken honestly, without thinking it would lead to anything, and now, here he was, standing in front of her. Her heart raced, but she tried to stay composed. Unsure whether to speak or simply observe this extraordinary moment, the audience clapped softly at first, then more enthusiastically as the realization sank in. Viewers at home held their breath, watching the teacher meet the man she had praised with such sincerity. Keanu approached her calmly, extending a hand in a gentle, respectful gesture. The teacher shook it, her hands trembling slightly. She found herself at a loss for words, which was unusual for someone who spoke so often in front of classrooms and cameras. Keanu spoke first, his voice steady and kind. He thanked her for her words, explaining that they had touched him because they came from honesty, not expectation. "Your message wasn't about fame or recognition," he said. "It was about kindness, and that matters more than anything. You reminded me that the small, quiet things we do every day are what truly define us." The teacher listened, feeling a mix of disbelief, gratitude, and emotion. She realized that her simple words had reached someone she deeply admired and that they had had a meaningful impact. The host guided the conversation lightly, allowing the moment to breathe. The teacher spoke about the surprise and how she had never imagined her words would reach him directly. She emphasized that her admiration had always been genuine, coming from her desire to highlight qualities worth noticing. Keanu nodded, listening intently, and the audience could sense the authenticity in both of them. There was no pretense, no performance, just two people connecting over shared values. Keanu took a moment to reflect on the teacher's point about modeling behavior for children. He shared that he had always tried to live by the principle of respect, treating everyone with dignity regardless of their status. He explained that recognition was not the goal, but living in a way that aligned with personal values was important. His calm and humble demeanor added depth to the moment. Reinforcing the sincerity of the exchange, the teacher responded with quiet humility, saying that she felt honored not by his fame, but by the fact that he had noticed her honesty. She expressed that teaching children to be kind was her life's purpose, and that seeing her message acknowledged by someone she admired affirmed the importance of speaking from the heart. Her words were simple yet profound, reflecting the power of sincerity over spectacle. Throughout the conversation, the audience remained captivated. They could feel the warmth and authenticity emanating from the two individuals. It was not just a celebrity meeting a fan. It was a genuine acknowledgement of shared values, a recognition of humanity, kindness, and respect. Viewers at home commented online, expressing how moved they were by the exchange. Some wrote that it reminded them to appreciate small acts of kindness in their own lives. Others noted how rare it was to witness such humility and sincerity in a world often dominated by attention-seeking gestures. Keanu then turned to the teacher and added, "Teachers like you are the real heroes. You shape lives, instill values, and make the world better quietly, day by day. Your dedication and honesty inspire not just your students, but all of us who are lucky enough to witness it." The teacher felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had dedicated her life to helping children, never expecting recognition, and now she was hearing words of acknowledgement from someone she admired deeply. The host allowed a pause, letting the moment sink in. The audience responded with heartfelt applause, appreciating the genuine connection they were witnessing. The teacher took a deep breath, trying to compose herself, and expressed her gratitude once more. She said that while she had admired him from afar, meeting him in person and hearing his words made her feel that kindness truly did matter and could create connections in unexpected ways. Keanu smiled and nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his expression. He had come to thank her, but he also left inspired by her sincerity. It was a moment of mutual respect and admiration, not defined by fame or attention, but by genuine human values. The teacher felt a profound sense of fulfillment, realizing that her simple act of speaking honestly had created a ripple effect far beyond what she had imagined. As the segment concluded, the cameras captured one final exchange, a handshake, a warm smile, and a shared glance that spoke volumes without words. The audience applauded, not just for the celebrity, but for the teacher whose words had sparked this meaningful encounter. Viewers online immediately began sharing clips, expressing their emotions, and celebrating the authentic connection between two people who valued kindness above all else. Backstage, the teacher reflected quietly on what had just happened. She had never sought recognition or attention, but now she understood that speaking honestly and from the heart could have unexpected and wonderful outcomes. Keanu's gesture of acknowledgement reinforced the idea that small, genuine actions could touch lives in ways she had never anticipated. It was a moment she would remember forever, not for fame or excitement, but for the affirmation of the values she had always held dear. For Keanu, the experience was equally meaningful. He had taken the time to honor someone who had spoken truthfully, quietly, and with sincerity. It reminded him that paying attention to others, acknowledging genuine messages, and acting with humility were as important as anything else in life. The encounter was simple, human, and heartfelt, a rare and beautiful example of how respect and kindness could bring people together across worlds that often seemed separate. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling, both the teacher and Keanu knew that this moment was special not because of television, social media, or public attention, but because of the quiet, human connection it had created. It was a reminder that sincerity, honesty, and respect could make a lasting impression, sometimes in ways no one could anticipate, and sometimes in ways that could touch hearts around the world. The studio was quiet for a moment after the cameras had stopped rolling. The teacher sat in her chair, still processing everything that had just happened. She had gone to the show to talk about the importance of kindness in schools, not imagining that her words would reach someone she admired so deeply. And yet here she was, having met Keanu Reeves in person. She could still feel the warmth of his words and the sincerity of his presence. It was surreal, but more than that, it was profoundly human. Even as she thought about it, her mind returned to her students. She imagined how they would react if they could see this moment. She knew that children often remembered lessons not because of what was written on the board, but because of what they saw in the behavior of adults. Now, in a way she had never expected, her own words and actions had created an example beyond the classroom, a real-life demonstration that kindness, honesty, and humility mattered. Keanu remained nearby, speaking quietly with the host and a few producers. He didn't seek attention or applause. His goal had been simple: to acknowledge the teacher's genuine admiration and to express that her words had meaning. He watched her thoughtfully, appreciating the calmness and sincerity she carried even under the spotlight. He realized that her humility was as rare and admirable as the qualities she had praised in him. The host invited the teacher to share her feelings with the audience one more time. She took a deep breath, her hands resting on her lap, and spoke softly yet with confidence. She explained that while she had admired someone for their kindness, the encounter taught her something even more important: that kindness itself is contagious. When someone acts with genuine care, it inspires others to do the same, often in ways that can't be measured or anticipated. The audience listened intently, some nodding, some smiling, feeling the truth in her words. Viewers at home were silent as well, captivated by the authenticity of the moment. There were no scripts, no dramatic cues, no artificial emotion, just two people who understood and valued humanity, sharing a simple but powerful exchange. The teacher's message resonated because it was real, and Keanu's presence reinforced that sincerity. He spoke next, addressing both the teacher and the audience. "I was deeply moved by her words," he said quietly. "They reminded me that small gestures of kindness, humility, and respect are more powerful than we often realize. It's easy to focus on grand achievements or fame, but real impact comes from the way we treat others every day. Teachers like her show us that every interaction matters, and that's something we should all remember." The teacher smiled, feeling both gratitude and amazement. She had always believed in the importance of living by example, but hearing these words from someone she had admired for so long validated her message in a way she could not have predicted. It was a rare and beautiful confirmation that sincerity and kindness were noticed and appreciated, even across distances and circumstances. Keanu continued, emphasizing that while fame might bring recognition, true influence comes from character. "It's not about being in the spotlight," he said. "It's about how you treat the people around you, and how you inspire others without seeking reward." Her words reminded me of that, and I am grateful. The teacher's eyes glistened as she absorbed his calm, heartfelt statement. She felt an overwhelming sense of connection, a shared understanding that transcended the ordinary boundaries between celebrity and fan, teacher and observer. The host encouraged them to reflect on what this moment meant to the viewers. The teacher spoke gently about the importance of gratitude, patience, and everyday kindness. She explained that she had always tried to model respect and consideration for her students, even when it went unnoticed. She stressed that simple gestures, listening, helping, acknowledging someone's efforts could have profound effects over time. Her words were simple but powerful, and the audience felt the weight of her sincerity. Keanu nodded as she spoke, quietly reinforcing her message with his attentive presence. He added that noticing and appreciating the good in others was a vital part of life, and that recognition should be offered not as a performance, but as a genuine acknowledgement of value. It was a reminder that real heroes exist in everyday life: teachers, parents, caregivers, and anyone who chooses to act with compassion and integrity. The teacher's mind wandered for a moment to the children she taught. She imagined how her students would feel knowing that their teacher's words had traveled so far, that they had inspired conversation beyond the walls of their classroom. She hoped that they would understand the lesson, that doing good and speaking honestly about it can create ripples that touch lives unexpectedly. This realization brought her a quiet joy. Deeper than any applause or recognition, Keanu took a moment to speak directly to the audience as well. He reflected on how remarkable it was to see someone's honest admiration expressed without any agenda or expectation. "It's easy to forget the impact our words can have," he said. "Sometimes all it takes is one sincere voice to remind the world of what really matters. Today, her voice has reminded me, and I hope it reminds others too." The studio audience responded with a warm applause, moved by the authenticity and depth of the message. The teacher's heart felt full. She had gone to the show expecting a simple conversation about kindness, and now she had experienced something extraordinary. She realized that the most meaningful moments often happen quietly, without planning or expectation, and that the impact of genuine words and actions can extend far beyond what we anticipate. This encounter had become a lesson in humility, connection, and the power of sincerity. Keanu, noticing her emotions, offered a kind smile. "Your words reminded me why it's important to notice the little things," he said softly. "Kindness, patience, and respect. These are the things that make a real difference. Thank you for sharing them with all of us." The teacher nodded, feeling a mixture of gratitude, humility, and awe. She could hardly believe that someone she had admired so deeply had not only heard her words, but had come to acknowledge them personally. As the segment came to a close, the host thanked both of them for sharing this moment. The cameras captured one final exchange, a quiet handshake, a smile, and a look that conveyed mutual respect and understanding. There was no need for dramatics. The moment itself was enough. Viewers at home were deeply moved, many commenting online about how inspiring it was to witness genuine kindness and humility in action. Backstage, the teacher reflected on what had just happened. She realized that the encounter was not about celebrity or recognition, it was about human connection. It was about the affirmation that genuine words, spoken sincerely, could reach someone, touch their heart, and create meaningful acknowledgement. She thought about how this moment might inspire her students, her colleagues, and even strangers who saw the segment. It was proof that honesty, humility, and kindness were noticed, valued, and appreciated. Keanu, too, left the studio with a sense of quiet fulfillment. He had come to express gratitude, but he also left reminded of the simple, powerful impact of sincerity. Watching the teacher speak and listening to her perspective reinforced his belief that respect and humility were more important than fame or accolades. It was a reminder that small, thoughtful gestures could create ripples of goodness that extended far beyond what anyone could measure. For the viewers, the encounter became more than a television segment, it became a symbol. It was a story of kindness recognized, humility acknowledged, and genuine human connection celebrated. People shared clips online discussing how moving it was to see a teacher and a public figure connect over shared values. It reminded them that small acts of sincerity, honesty, and respect could create meaningful moments in anyone's life. The teacher returned to her daily routine in the days that followed, still focused on her students and her classroom, but with a renewed sense of inspiration. She understood that her words had the power to touch hearts far beyond the walls of her school. She continued to teach with patience, kindness, and dedication, now knowing that honesty and sincerity could reach places she had never imagined. Keanu returned to his work quietly, appreciating the reminder of what truly mattered. Fame and attention were fleeting, but genuine human connection endured. That single moment in the studio had reaffirmed his belief that observing, acknowledging, and acting with kindness were the most meaningful contributions anyone could make to the world. In the end, the encounter left a lasting impression on everyone involved: the teacher, Keanu, the studio audience, and viewers across the globe. It was a story about the power of sincere words, the beauty of quiet acknowledgement, and the profound impact of genuine kindness. And for the teacher, it became a cherished memory, a reminder that speaking honestly and valuing the small important things could lead to moments of true human connection that last a lifetime.